Hope you're all awake now as we're going to continue. And what I'm now going to look at, we've spent all the time to look at this, and we're now only going to look at the creationists and the postmodernists, and I'm going to try and wrap it up very, very quickly. So, psychosocial transformation performance of the human sexes, modern human sexes. I stress the modern human sexes. Now, taking this angle of incidence, where there is a battle of the sexes within the modern human species. The battles is fought on two uncoordinated fronts, and neither is constrained by economics or anything else. So on the one front, the sexes have to conform to purity standards of a good moral order commanded by the Creator in the cosmic realm. That's what we had over here. And the other one of these battles are sexes have to conform to the purely equality and equity demands of feminist movements, specifically the radical feminist movement, not the others. So it should be corrected over here, but I'm not going to do it now. These battles are very much global, but at least one of the fronts may be almost completely suppressed in some countries. So there are countries where purity rules rule. Both battles are supplied with oxygen in Western liberal democratic style countries, and I can't stress this enough. Liberation of liberated countries, or liberal countries, give radical postmodernists the space, the air to do what they do. And we also give the creationists the space to propagate what they want to propagate. So I can't stress that enough. Given our modern digital lifestyles, which is capitalism, innovation, freedom to challenge cultural practices, which we do, in critical mode, the awakening to unfair social practices came about, albeit slowly. But there was an awakening, and social things did happen. Women can go to work now. Women can go to university. Sorry about this. All right. Not over yet. Unfortunately, the rational and reasonable changes that should follow after the awakening were thwarted when the unfair practices became super salient, and the issue was driven by ignorance, irrationality, and revolutionary politics with a power-only focus. And I've said this before. The radical postmodernists made the issue super salient, and by doing that, we created an opposition. But we'll get to that later. The efforts are not directed to rectify the situation and stopping unfairness, but at fighting proxy battles to pass through the delusional gates in order to enter their utopian existence. What we do, in both cases, is an utopia awaiting you. You must just do what you're told, and you will enter into the gates of utopia if you're not cancelled. And by cancellation, they send you to your utopia without a ticket or an entry pass. The utopian existence differs between the traditionalist, which is woman as mother in core family. And what can I call that? Woman as mother in a core family? I call it motherism. And then the radical feminists, woman as ultimate power, unconstrained by family, matriarchism. But that's not really true, because an elephant matriarch is still constrained by family, but not in the case of LGBTQ, actually not the LGBTQ. We're looking at this area over here. Sorry for that, my mistake. So they are the ultimate power, and that's what they want. There's no such thing as equality or equity. They want absolute power. And they will call it a myth. Remember, we did the myths. This text evidently show that the unfair discrimination based on sex differentiation is not an ecological development problem, but rather a psychosocial performance problem within modern human culture, saturated in delusion because of unconstrained imagination. Now, what did Plato and the old Greeks wanted to tell us? They wanted to tell us to move from our delusions to reality. Unfortunately, we moved the other way. And remember, we did that in lecture 1, if I remember correctly. Right, now, motherism as transformational performance. What does it mean? The supernatural motherism explanation is about a purity position of female behavior. It's all about purity. And the mother role of women in core families as property of a possessive, God-given patriarchal spouses. I'm going to read this again. And the mother role of women in core families as a property of a possessive, God-given patriarchal spouses. So, yeah, within this, maybe there's a change in the climate or something, or the seasons. Within these supernatural explanations, the focus is on the psychosocial performance of how humans make sense of themselves as intentionally created beings of privilege. So we are intentionally created beings of privilege within the creationist idea. Humans are privileged with glorious purpose to rule over the other life forms on the planet as custodians on behalf of the cosmic creator. So there's some form of supremacy. If it's not males, supremacy over women, or a race over another, then at least it's us over the animals and the plants. The evidence in favor of ecological development of living organic systems is tolerated or rejected. Mostly rejected. So thus, supernatural patterns of psychosocial performance complexifies human intelligence into a vertical moral reality with purity codes that mostly strongly differentiate between the male and female sexes in a concrete vision of purpose and value. So it's very concrete. Males, females, nothing in between. It's impossible. It doesn't happen. And here I'm actually referring to LGBT, the interesting, not to the imaginary one. So this is my definition. Should I read it again? Supernatural patterns of psychosocial performance complexifies human intelligence into a vertical moral reality with purity codes that is strongly differentiate between male and female sexes. So, it's in purpose and in value. However, by rejecting the ecological development of organic incidents, the supernatural explanations also rejects their own evolution in the minds and behavior of humans from dawn of mankind. Religion used to be a form of spirituality. And if I remember correctly, we did this right now in lecture 2. And it developed into religions we know today. So by saying evolution doesn't happen, things are exactly the same, they're actually rejecting themselves. And then I go on here about the early shaman tradition. It's about 500,000 years old. And between 40 and 20,000 years ago, we still had female figurines and female gods. But this is as little time ago as 20,000 years. And then they disappeared. And about between 3,000 and 5,000 years ago, human consciousness figuratively turned around its axis, and supernatural explanations changed qualitatively from the shaman spiritual ideas, and it changed to what we today call the actual awakening, the actual mental revolution or spiritual revolution. And a few things happened during this revolution. The shaman tradition was compromised. The relationship with God shifted in a couple of ways. One, gods of family and social structures, similar to humans, were mostly replaced. Not completely replaced, Indians still have it, by an internal universal male god that ended the reign of all female goddesses. So this one male god ended the reign of all female goddesses. 2. Fear of cycle fitting into a cosmic rhythm by following commandments and servitude shifted to a participatory relationship, open to co-creation between God and the future. You can decide to accept God and get baptized, that kind of thing. Right, the Christian Revolution. Well, as I say here, the female gods were common, but they were all killed. The male gods were given power, and therefore they replaced female gods. So now the power belongs to the male gods, and therefore to males. The post-actual global religions adopted a stronger contrast between male and female members of a human species and their value and roles in a vertical created relationship with a male dominance across cultures. So not in all tribes. There are still tribes out there where the females are the rulers. And much, but this is only my personal idea. Much of our innovation many years ago were due to the work of grandmothers, looking after the children, trying to keep them busy, and inventing things in the process. You don't have to agree with me. It's a personal thing. Now, what happened about 2,000 years ago? A critical social spiritual revolution happened that radically reset the tradition of actual revolution. So 2,000 years ago, something happened within the actual revolution. And change came in the form of wisdom teachings and the revolutionary practices of Jesus of Nazareth. So, wisdom teachings and revolutionary practices of the biological Jesus of Nazareth. He treated males and females equally and with equal respect. And just this morning I had a discussion about equal respect. And expectations, notwithstanding the fact that this disciple, all his disciples were male. So that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at the equal respect and how he treated people, not who followed it. It was kind of a tradition for males to form groups and follow a wisdom teacher. As far as the evidence holds, Jesus of Nazareth was the only actual revolutionary worldwide that bridges the sex duality. It doesn't seem that any of the others, even in the East, did that, as obviously as Jesus of Nazareth. Unfortunately, the Christian tradition and the leadership of Paul did not emphasize this revolutionary spirit or gust of female-male equality, and therefore Christianity lost the message of male-female fusion. Yeah, I can see the looks on your faces. Given a pro-Western Christian calendar, the male-female duality is still prominent across the world in 2020. Well, let's make it now 2024. Now, it didn't change in the past 4 years. Even though Western culture applied a moral of modest fairness since the mid-1800s, that put them at the forefront to dissolve a strong sex-determined duality and motherism, it was not successful. The reason being that the inequality is entangled with purity codes and entrenched in power games. Therefore, many Christian participants still apply absolute and strong purity codes to sexuality. So, if you want today to do what the feminists want, you've got a problem. And there are two problems here, actually. The one is that the inequality is entangled with purity codes. And the other is there's political power games at play. Men who don't give up their power that easily. They really feel the privilege is theirs, but partly because of the creationist argument. Now, I've spoken about motherism and the purity codes. I didn't write it here, but I could have. Now let's talk about matriarchism. And remember here I'm only talking about humans and modern humans, because it's not like that throughout. It's actually an unfortunate word I chose in here, matriarchism, as transformational performance. Feminism as movement fought for the right of women to equally share in their rational promises. Sorry, let me start over. Feminism as movement fought for the right of women to equally share in the rational promises, opportunities and benefits of liberal capitalism. So what happened when men fought for liberation? Well, actually men and women. The men got it, but then they didn't share it. So women had to make their own movements in order to share. And to some extent, they were successful. Now, it started in 1848, and it lasted, the feminist movement, to 2008. During the 1900s, the movement got the right to vote, to own property, to take control over their productive processes and responsibilities, which is now in America via elections, via a president, an issue. With Project 2025, they may want to take it back. Personally, I can't speak for anybody else. I hope it doesn't happen. I really hope it doesn't happen. So, if I could have voted there, I would have voted for a woman. Unfortunately, by 2012, matriarchism, under a radical feminist performance label, deprived liberal feminists of all their oxygen and expelled the successful tradition movement from the scene. So what actually, remember we had this, where the radicals said that they're building bridges, and I said they can't build bridges, they can only burn them. Here it comes again. They actually deprived the feminist movement from their oxygen. And many feminists were just cancelled. Liberal feminists, that is. So, yeah. I spoke about after the Enlightenment, so I'm not going to read all this to you. It's in your notes, and you can read it. The feminist movement set out to draw attention to their legitimate claims and stop unfair discrimination against females in many households and civil institutions. And as I said, the early feminist movements succeeded, especially the 1848 Seneca Falls Convention in New York, where it started. Then they say there's different waves. And this was the first wave, and that got him to vote 1920 in USA and 1902 in Australia. Can you believe that? The second wave was defined in the 1960s. Now that's a special time in the life of people like me, my age. It was part of a general social turbulence for freedom and peace. And the hippies and free sex for all, that kind of thing. And drugs and music. We've all been young. Now, at that stage, the feminist movement fought for and they secured the approval of a birth control pill by the FDA. That was in America. And the right of abortion within limits. And the introduction of anti-sex discrimination laws, equal work for equal pay. That hasn't happened completely yet, but it's much better than it was, and I hope it will soon change. Now become equal. Now, what happened over here? Not so much over here, talking about here. And the fourth wave surfaced in 2012. That was like yesterday for me, as radical feminists and implemented a Marxist-Leninist agenda. We used art and culture to encourage women to express anger towards men because they are victims of patriarchy. And it was very much the celebrities, social media warriors, and academics in social law and human studies that drive us. It wasn't, the first wave was upper class women, and they kind of tried to only keep it between themselves. The second wave in the 1960s was a free-for-all. And the fourth wave, the third wave was like just continuing the second wave, but more formally. And the fourth wave changed all of this. And now it wasn't so much the women in general, it was the celebrities who decided we've got a grip on reality. Remember, these are people in art, culture, movie stars. Now, what does a movie star do? They pretend to be someone else in another reality all the time. And they're saying, we've got a grip on reality. Yeah, I can't even think how that would be possible. As I said, first 3 waves achieved some success. The 4th wave, they just gave the old Chinese idea that an extremist create an opposite extremist, gave that new life. So, what was the results? There's a whole list of results. I just want you to go through that. And it's also all about patriarchy. Let me just take 1 year. Males were replaced using a demographic specifier of white, a position specifier of power by privilege, and a quality specifier in the dialectic tradition as patriarchal. So that was one of the results the 4th wave achieved. And you'll be very happy to know that we've done, before the break, we've done the thesis, and now after the break, we've done the antithesis, and what we're getting to now is a synthesis. And it's very much the same in what we had with the race lecture we had, and we had to push past certain things. The mentally developed realities, the projection of modernism, the Marxist-Leninist post-paradigm and radical narratives. That's what we must push away. And we must push through the proximate perception horizon. I think that was lecture 3, if I remember correctly. Lecture 5. The pedagogic and andragogic informational bubbles, which is actually the same as the previous one. So what are we looking for? We're looking for a synthesis that provides a return on investments in science, entrepreneurship, and capital. This is a return on investments. And over and above, on effective investment, what I call the ROI, qualitative information utility, that's what it is. The results of both these returns can be reported to stakeholders and can be maximized in sexuality as engaged as a complex adaptive system phenomenon. So, when the CEO or management, personnel management, must decide over equality within the workplace and equality of pay, they must look at the return on investment, and some will tell you that women are much more productive than men. I've actually said a similar thing earlier. But we must also look at the qualitative returns, psychological, on long-term medical, where the wellness is improved. And we must communicate that to the stakeholders. I don't think a CEO is doing its job if the stakeholders doesn't know about that. We've got today the CEOs do the, I've forgotten the acronym, but it is about the ecology and 1 or 2 other things which they put in social responsibility. Now, this will to some way go under social responsibility, but I'm talking here at a very specific thing. So, a quantitative evaluation of ecological and psychological social dialectic on the male-female conundrum. So, what is a return on investment? And you can just read through them. It will be available on the internet as well for those online and said, but we don't have a notes. I'm just not sure when it's gonna happen. So see if there's something very special. Yeah, it's just very academic. Now, a qualitative evaluation of ecological and psychological dialectic on gender. So when we reflect on the loudest voices in the current gender debate, then we find that the feminist debate in academia provides a qualitative evaluation of a mentally developed reality. So it's not real. It's again one of those projections. They think up, imagine a reality, and then they act accordingly. And they base a critical evaluation on a projection of modernism, and then they focus on what? Countries with European populations that follow liberal philosophies, where I'm going again, manage democratic institutions, and with a capitalistic economic foundation, where you can own property as an individual. That's what I focus on. I've said it a couple of times, it's really important. The radical goal is to undermine merit-based freedoms, private ownership in favor of individuals, and then to promote socialism at some level of intensity, social and economic equity of outcomes across a population which makes everybody poor, but they won't tell you that. Real utopia means that there are few people, few women in this case, are the matriarchs and use up all the resources, squander it, and the rest of you will be poor. And they want progressive social justice. And I've already earlier said that I can understand progressive taxes, but not progressive social justice. So, the propositions used in the gender identity and unfair discrimination debates of a fourth reincarnation of feminism include, for example, derogative labels such as patriarchism and white male supremacy. We already know that. They say it's a power struggle. The male-female duality is a power struggle. It's not a normal distribution. And as I said before, first three waves did very well. The fourth wave screwed it up in good English. Right, and then I say it's unfortunate that the supernatural explanations and the hypersocial arguments are really working against what we've got here. They're not a good antithesis. So there's no synthesis possible. And I'm going to get to that now. And this is the very last thing. Okay, there was something else I had to just look at, if you don't mind, before I go here. I said I wanted to look at LGBT. Sorry about this. Now, where did the gay debate come to power? And it was in New York City at the Stonewall riots on June 28, 1969. I was about to be an adult. And until then, and sometimes still, homosexuality is considered as sodomy. and it was illegal in many countries, and even in the United States it was illegal in 49 states at the time. And it was the police raided this big gay bar run by the mafia. And what the mafia did is they bribed the police not to raid the place too often, not to close it down, so police got something on it, but they had to allow the police from time to time to just keep their customers in check, because they were charging ridiculous prices for food and drinks. So, on one hand washes the other, the police and the mafia. And on this day, a few policemen came in to raid the place, obviously with permission, and they started to arrest the bartenders and the customers. And this time the customers didn't take it. They went into a riot. Eventually there was barricades, the police, they were waiting for reinforcements, so they barricaded themselves into the bar, and then the rioters put the bar light. And that protest lasted for a couple of days until the 1st of July. And there was then a movement, and if I can find the name over here, the Gay Liberation Front, and they started advocating for equal rights for gay people. Now, is that right or wrong? Now we're talking about LGBT. Remember we said it's natural. Natural doesn't mean it's right or good. It just means it's normal. They deserved the same rights for the females, the same right of the males, because we're also under this curve. Now, what's not under this curve is a creationist. What's not under this curve is the fourth movement of LGBTQ, QI. What's not under this curve is this queer cultural revolution. Does that mean the queer cultural revolution is wrong? No, not at all. We've got clothes, and they've kind of differentiated clothes and colors to one sex, either male or female. I think was it blue and pink or something? I'm not sure. I think so. And they are changing that around. It's a cultural revolution. There's nothing wrong with a cultural revolution. However, they can't tell us over here what to do with our lives. It's not their place. They're not wrong, it's just not their place. And they are actually also here, but they are ignoring that fact. So I just wanted to bring that up. And then I just want to very quickly do something which you must forgive me for doing that. Just get rid of some of this, then leave all the space. If you go onto the internet, what's it called? Google. Let me do everything. And what I have here, let me see, is what we know is LGBTQIA+. What is the one normally used. Intersex, bisexual, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans and queer. But there are others. And if I keep the LGBTQ there, then there's one saying QIP2SAAA. QIP2, and I've forgotten, SAA. Now, 2S I can remember as two-spirited. And it's used, there's pansexual as well, P, pansexual. Okay. Then there's another one, and it goes IAPK. And this has got to do with addiction treatment. Then there's another one. Captain J FNBA plus. Can you see how confusing it is becoming? It's ridiculous. All right. Now, back to the end. Where I'm looking for synthesis. And what I'm saying is you won't find it in alternative realities. There's a lot of them here. I'm not going to read them now, it's going to take all afternoon. But when is synthesis possible? That's the one taken care of. Gender-based deprivation, exploitation and harassment occurrences are deliberate. We must understand that. And it must be exposed with factual information. Exposed to factual information. Constrained within ethical institutional structures. Like we constrain the men with marriage, we must constrain the exploitation and harassment of the LGBT community and the females as well. We must keep to the ecological realities as a thesis. It can never be ignored or substituted by projection when designing fair solutions around being and roles. We want a synthesis, a fair one. The male-female duality cannot be subjected to either supernatural or hyper-social ideas, but they do provide a useful antithesis. So what I'm saying is you can't ignore the supernatural and the hyper-social, the feminists. You can't ignore them. Because, especially the feminist movements, the first three, provided a perfect antithesis for a synthesis, and they got results. Now, by unfair and unwarranted discrimination against every person without a strong explicit and implicit male identity is the cause of wealth, health, wellness, and performance problems in the lives of females and men that fail the traditional standard. I want to keep referring back to here, but I've already wrapped it out. So, if we discriminate and we just take the masculine and feminine, male, female, for ideal bodies, for ideal personalities, then it causes health problems, it causes wellness problems, and performance problems in the lives of males and females. For instance, women are getting breast implants because they're trying to compete the ideal bodies of some of these celebrities. That's not good for them. Actually, some of the research showed that they are as depressed as people who actually get help for depression. So I'm not sure whether it was a correlation or not, or causation, but I remember the research. As technology pushes against the frontier of humanoids, purposed android robots and the medical profession are actually substituting biological organs with synthetic organs and creating mechanistic cyborgs, as well as things like test tube babies and artificial insemination. It is unclear what will happen to the male-female duality in human-created worlds. This is a human-created world. Now, I know there are some androids, especially in China and Japan, which are created human either for servicing clients or for servicing men, sex robots they call them. But synthesis is not in the technology, but the technology strengthens both thesis and antithesis. And what I want to say, discrimination against women, for example, when it comes to domination and synthesis based on respect in merit and merit must be achieved. So for synthesis on equality of pay, you must actually look at respect of a person and merit. You must achieve those. And with this, I'm saying thank you to all of you for being here every time and for listening to the lectures and taking part in the practicals we had. And thank you very much. Enjoy your day.